Good afternoon. Hope you had a good lunch. It was quick. All right, we'll start our panel on time because this afternoon we have 4 excellent speakers, and it's on cuisine and food. So I'm Professor Zhou Min, the head of Sociology Division, and I also direct the Chinese Heritage Center. Talking about heritage, on this campus, we actually have 3 national monuments. And the 3 national monuments include the Nanyang University Arch, the Nanyang University Memorial, and the former Nanyang University Administration and Library Building, which houses the Chinese Heritage Center. And the Chinese Heritage Center is one of the heritage centers in Singapore. We also have Malay Heritage Center and Indian Heritage Center in town. And Chinese Heritage Center is an autonomous institute of NTU with a research center and a library and a museum. We aim to advance knowledge and understanding of the Chinese overseas and to preserve Chinese cultural heritage as an integral part of Singapore's multicultural heritage. And our museum have 2 permanent exhibitions. One is Nanta Pictorial Exhibition, which traces the history of Nanyang University, very inspiring stories about Nanyang University. And then the other is Chinese More or Less, that explores the Chinese identities and its evolving changes. And so we also have temporary exhibitions. And the reason why I say this is the Chinese Heritage Center and its museum, the museum opens 7 days a week, including, except for public holidays. So you have my open invitation to visit the center at your convenience. So welcome to visit NTU and to look at our heritage and national monument. Now, our panel. This panel is about cuisine and food. A cuisine is a style of cooking characterized by distinctive ingredients, techniques, and dishes, and usually is associated with specific culture or a geographic region. A cuisine is primarily influenced by the ingredients that are available locally or through trade. So there are a number of factors influencing cuisine, one of which is an area's climate, which in large measures determines the kind of native food available. And the other factor is economic conditions, which affects trade, that is the distribution, import, export of food, and also religious and cultural norms and values. So when we talk about cuisine and food, it's a cultural phenomenon which involves a set of skills, knowledge, rituals, symbols, and traditions concerning crops, harvesting, fishing, animal husbandry, conservation, processing, cooking, and particularly sharing and consumption of food. So today we have 4 distinguished panelists to share with us their ideas, thoughts, and practices on cuisine and food as a cultural heritage. Our first speaker is Ms. Anna Juricic. Anna is a sociologist, life consultant, and mentor in personal development and transformation. She will speak about the powerful impact of food, thoughts, and emotions on our well-being. Let's welcome Anna. Thank you, Anna.
First of all, I would like to thank Professor Nanetti and his team for inviting me here with you. It's a real privilege to be here in NTU. What an extraordinary time of change on the planet it is. And we, as individuals, are part of much larger sea change, feeling our current systems and models of reality often inadequate to face faster pace of modernity. Being in the personal development field, I see thousands of people in search for new paths of transformation in order to achieve their physical and emotional balance and to face with the complexity in their lives. We are living a kind of collective neurosis that makes our history trajectory and our connection with the past weaker. This makes the transmission of our cultural heritage vulnerable. So my point here is to uncover the impact of three fundamental pillars on wellness that assist us in achieving our higher potential and well-being, and to inspire you to be more aware of what the proper attention towards a positive transformation are. We are all skilled enough to know what behavior could create better results in our life. But the issue here is certainly not defining what is good or bad. Even if we might have an idea of what perfection around well-being has to be like, we are not always making the proper choices with regards to food. And when we don't, we judge ourselves so harshly. So these three pillars are nutritional, mental, and spiritual. My aim today is to show you how amazingly they interact with each other and the importance to nourish them all properly in order to express our highest potential and be more aware of what we are transmitting to future generations, not only in form, but also in content. Today, we are blessed to live in a time where we have easy access to wonderful emergency medicine. We are blessed to live in a time with access to very high levels of hygiene. There are many reasons we are going to live longer and longer, but the real question to ponder upon is, are we living too short and dying too long? There are many reasons we are going to live longer. The quality of our life is built on a proper daily interactions of these three pillars. In first place, our awareness of our precious body and the nutrients we are taking in. And this is a nice talk after lunch. Because they, of course, nourish our cells and also the healthy functioning of our body. The second pillar is the important need to become aware of our thoughts. This one is critical because we are not even aware on how uncontrolled mind chatting, if polluted with negative and judgmental thoughts, can be disruptive. The third pillar is the importance to get in touch with our inwardness and understand its crucial role in achieving peace and balance. They are not isolated categories, but they interfere and affect each other much more than we think. And because of these rapid changes and challenges that are occurring in this age, we cannot avoid looking at them more closely. I believe we need to explore more deeply within in order to bring to surface and remove the blocks that obstacles the natural intelligence that drive us to make the appropriate choices for our well-being. This is a process that cannot avoid to include our history and cultural heritage as a main grounding platform to cope with new models of reality. The choices that we make now have a great impact on our future, and the choice to change is in our hands, and our hands only. Even if we are blessed to live in these parts of the world where we have easy access to food, we are on one hand depreciating the importance of the nutrients for the healthy functioning of our body. And on the other hand, we are taking for granted the risks of some bad behavioral patterns, such as the regular consumptions of refined sugar and processed foods we so easily got used to consume. And this actually became a global problem in spite of any local legacy in cuisine. Taking care of the quality of the food is important, not only for the more evident need for the variety of nutrients, but also because there are substances, especially in processed foods, that may interfere with all sorts of aspects in the chemistry of our body. And this approach regarding foods does not belong to a Malay, Chinese, or Indian tradition, but it is an indication of the unstoppable economic interests of huge industries that have been shaping our life and cultures in the recent decades, brought about by globalization. It is certainly not a heritage from our ancestors, but the serious risk now is that it is in effect becoming a heritage that we ourselves are leaving to future generations. We must be more aware of which legacy we are choosing to leave to our children and future generations with regards to food. Only our deep awareness can override the constant overstimulation of those handy products much easier to consume. Just as we have done with the tobacco industry, we must become more aware and keep striving towards healthier choices and eliminate those that harm us. Chemically, there are billions of reactions going on every second in our body, and that alone is miraculous because we do not have to put any effort nor give any instructions. This just happens without our control. But to allow all this to happen, we need to supply it with proper minerals and vitamins, and the only way we can do it, I can't stress enough, is from real food. So when we think about which legacy we are leaving to future generations, we can't avoid to think about the soil and the water, but that's a much bigger conversation. When we are compromised nutritionally, there are consequences and can have a profound impact on our physical health in the future. We want not to regret in the second part of our life our bad behavioral patterns of the first part. There could be emotional reasons or chemical reasons we might be driven to behave improperly, in spite of all our knowledge. Recent neurological studies have focused on the phenomenon of neuroplasticity. The study shows that our brain, during our lifetime, has the plasticity to create and form new pathways and connections. And it has been recently proven that we can achieve this intentionally. The emphasis is now on how our environment, attitude, and emotions control our psychology, our biology, and also our gene expressions. This means not that our personal beliefs affect our personal realities, but also that the collective beliefs of a culture or society affect our personal biology and behavior. And in terms of complexity, this raises the costs and utilities. Our mind is there powerfully creating each and every moment. It can't stay neutral. The problem is how and what we choose to create, because we can create from a place of love, compassion, empathy, joy, beauty, and all this beauty that we saw in the art and choreography in the recent panel, or from resistance, frustrations, hate, and all this negative emotional scale. This is just a matter of choice, in spite of any circumstance or event. Practicing to target our thoughts, or what is referred to as intention or intentionality, appears to produce energy potent enough to change our physical reality. We are constantly choosing from the context of the ego-based behavior pattern. The ancient Greeks used to compare the ego to a mind that is separate from itself. What happens to a cell when it separates from the rest of the tissue? We all know a cancer, a malignancy is formed. And what we're seeing now on the planet are collective disruptive patterns that of course need our attention and forces an intervention, but not from the same perspective of fear and anger, but from a much higher human potential of creation, like trust, empathy, compassion, and the higher expression of creativity. Thoughts, habits, emotions, and beliefs leads to behaviors that brings to results. These critical steps are the equation of what we perceive in our life. There is no way to change our results, in spite of any hard effort or struggling, if we don't change our thoughts, habits, emotions, and beliefs. And since thoughts lead our emotions, emotions lead our actions, and these don't always lead to the results that we desire, there should be something different in our habits that need to be reviewed. The same behavior naturally brings to the same results. If we want to change the results, we need to start by becoming more aware of our thoughts and taking absolute care of our emotions. It is a matter of responsibility that needs to be taken. But let's take a look on how all this may impact on our well-being and the perception of our reality. We all know there are hormones in our bodies. They play their role as chemical messengers. We might say they can be love hormones or fear hormones. And they transmit information to our organs based on what they believe and think, rather than what it is our reality. You might be someone who know you're really safe and you have a lot of love in your life and you might live your life in that way, but you may have all these fears and they produce a lot of adrenaline, one of the stress hormones. The big challenge today is that there is a dramatically increasing number of people living permanently under the stress hormones, which are predominantly adrenaline and cortisol. So adrenaline tells our life is in danger, which historically was a tiger in the jungle. Cortisol informs all our cells that there is a chronic stress, which historically were floods, famines, and wars. This emotional reaction today is triggered by our relationship, our finances, our body, weight, or whatever it is we are warring against long term. And when we're making cortisol, we are communicating to every cell in our body. There is no food left in the world. So the problem is that it still creates the same meaning today like it did in the past. When we are producing high levels of adrenaline, we are communicating our body is in danger. And the body is programmed to respond in 3 different ways: fight, flight, or freeze. When we are under the gun of flight and fight nervous system, being run by its cocktail of intoxicating chemicals, we are programmed to be concerned only about getting out of this danger. This is surviving mode versus creating, and has nothing to do with the human creative power and higher potential, because our brain and body are out on balance, are involved in that moment to be concerned to go out of the danger. The body has been informed it is in. So there are also a lot of changes that occur in our body to help to get away from this danger. Number 1, the blood pressure goes up. Think of the adults in the Western countries that suffer from high blood pressures. Number 2, the blood supply that is concentrated in our digestive system To help to get nutrients and place them properly in the organs, I divert it to the periphery, to our muscles, to give us the strength and the power to get out from the danger. Number 3, when we live on adrenaline, it changes the fuel the body thinks it is safe to use, because in any given moment, the body decides which fuel to use, and it can use only one of two, glucose or fat, or eventually the combination of both. So when the body gets the message is in danger, it will use always the fastest fuel, glucose. This is why we have lost the ability to use fat properly. And guess what happens when our glucose reserves in our body starts to slow down? Even if we are conscious that all that sugar doesn't serve to our health, we can't override the desire of it. And today, statistics shows we have more deaths caused by severe nutritional malfunctions, like obesity, than from lack of food. And look how rapidly this phenomenon has invaded Asiatic continent in spite of so many different variety of healthy cuisine traditions, especially with young generations. Also, the uncontrolled use of caffeine makes our body to produce adrenaline. So it is very difficult to be emotionally balanced when we are filling our body with all this caffeine, in spite of any story that we are keeping telling us that this doesn't impact to ourselves. But also the perception of danger and urgency leads us to make a lot of adrenaline, and we have lost the capacity to be in touch with what we have, because of this constant pressure and urgency. And because we live in the age where our body is affected by much frenetic activity and assault of modernity, there is an urgent need to get in deeper touch with what creates our well-being, individually and collectively. The body, so overstimulated, like it is nowadays, is picking up information that are inaccurate. On the other hand, so much of our enthusiasm and motivations comes from the strength of our body. If we imagine 150 years of human evolution, and imagine measuring it with a school ruler, the last 500 years will be less than a millimeter. It is a drop in the ocean. And think about a multitude of change that has happened in the last 100 years, if not even in the last 20, with regards to radical innovations, perceptions of a collective pressure, urgency, access to everything immediately, cell phones, social networks. So imagine the amount of all these completely new based hormone informations that our body has to pick up, while it still thinks that all remaining informations of 150 million years of human evolutions are still true. That's the reason why connecting with that greater power within us through cultivating our spirituality is an approach towards a deep transformation that we cannot avoid anymore. Living consciousness with spiritual awareness drives our emotions to a safe place through a daily routine practice. Furthermore, this will inform the 50 trillion cells in our body that they are safe as well. This is such an important tool to cope with the increasing of complexity, because it will add balance to our thoughts and emotions. Whatever practice, ritual, or cultural heritage you may use, or you think is a proper one for you, use it. These truths are important because they give recognition. We cannot avoid exercising our internal musculature and prepare emotionally and balance mentally in the same way we practice our external exercise. The true purpose of that is to get beyond our analytical mind and enter into the subconscious mind, where we can create a real change. When we enter into that space, we can create and memorize such coherence between our thoughts and emotions. Acquiring those skills needs only practice, but can produce big changes within our mind and body. And of course, it will reflect positively also in our life. Willingness is the powerful ingredient to start to live more consciously, firmly grounded in our identity. If we do not align with our true essence as human beings, we will increasingly translate complexity into chaos. Myths, stories, images, icons, and all the richness of our cultural heritage and they are powerful psychic vortex. They can drive us through the present. This is not the time to walk through narrow and uncertain paths in search for our identity. This is not the time to step aside and wait for someone or something to help or change. This is the time to step in wide highways that will bring us straight from fear and judgmental thoughts and behavior, our critical mind, to empathy and compassion of that higher intelligence within us that will naturally bring us building bridges. My passion and mission is to help people change perception of themselves and proactively create a different life. Belonging to a particular place, area, or community makes us the steward of the trajectory of the history and heritage of that group during our lifetime. Our participation and sense of responsibility is needed. Cultivating the meaning behind every thought, action, and decision will improve significantly the responsibility not only for ourselves, but also collectively. When we start living more conscious lives, we detach from the obsession of time, body, and life dramas. And we break down all those habitual patterns that keep us stuck in our comfort zone. We become more emotionally stronger, grounded, and more connected to that universal mind that from an embryo creates a complex human being. And then we become driven to choose to eat healthier. We start clearing out our emotional imbalances that do not serve us anymore. We start observing our thoughts and strive to direct them more creatively. And living consciously inevitably brings us different feelings and awareness of our beautiful planet. Scientific frontiers teach us that everything is energy. Transformation requires an energetic reconciliation with these three pillars as a further step towards our well-being. So it is fundamental to start to take care of that energy in every aspect of our life, tangible and not, because they all cooperate and interact together. I invite people to experiment and to objectively observe the results in their life. Rather than taking just intellectual information and put aside as a nice philosophy, because just taking intellectual information without any practice, we do not give any power, any energetic power. There is no life force in that. Only practice gives, also in our cultural heritage, gives this, brings our traditions alive. And it gives the power and the energy. Because an untrained mind, essentially, is a mind that can achieve very little. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna.